Hey everyone, welcome back to Ben's Almanac, the only show where you can watch it being built as it's being built. I'm Mac, and this is devlog number 9. The devlog series is one where we showcase the show getting built before it actually goes live. And for any new viewers, the show itself is an AI driven presentation. Basically, I want to take a Zoom meeting and make an AI built that whole video and then present it to us, the audience, for our viewing pleasure. Now, what we have been working on the past few weeks is constructing this in such a way that it's repeatable, traceable, and directable. And what I mean by that is, whilst we want the AI to write and generate as much as possible, we also want to be able to control what's actually happening and getting produced and have an influence and say in it. Because our goal is to actually work with these machine learning tools and use them to the best of our ability. And to do that requires us to be involved in the process. What I have realized this past week is that the presentation pipeline that I have been building is almost over engineered for what's required. And what I mean by that is I was building a presentation generator with the expectation of building presentations similar to what I'm used to. And so I've worked historically in credit analysis for like credit cards and stuff. And those decks can get quite long and very technical. And when you are presenting them, it is in, units of a 30-minute meeting, which is really standard for almost anyone, or an hour-long meeting. But on YouTube, it's quite different because people expect it to be faster and punchier. And in order to do that, I needed to calculate exactly how long the deck needs to be and what's actually going to be generated freshly week to week. And I realized it was like way shorter. So for a standard YouTube video release that like somebody might actually watch all the way to the end in like the education category that we're in, right? For us, it's going to be around 14 to 16 minutes in length. And when you are doing PowerPoint presentations, you want to estimate each slide if there are no questions from the audience, which that's something at least we control a little bit more, to be around 2 minutes long, or like 1.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. So about 2 minutes long. So for a 16-minute presentation, that means that we're only going to get in 8 good slides if we're doing it properly and actually presenting those slides. The issue that we have on top of that is that not only is 8 slides pretty short, but for the purposes of a recurring weekly show itself, we need to cut that back even more from the main segment. And so what I mean by that is there's going to be at least 2 slides. One I'm calling the witticism slide, and one is going to be like the max review slide, and there's a potential third that's going to be like a sign-off slide, just something to soften the end of the presentation before signing off. That will be recurring, so no matter what the presentation is, those will always be there. Now the witticism slide is basically just like an introductory layer. I'm using it for 2 purposes. One, this show, Ben's Almanac, right, is named from Poor Richard's Almanac, which was written by Ben Franklin. And he's really well known for using his aphorisms. I just call witticisms because I always mix up that word and pronounce it incorrectly. Things like the early bird gets the worm or whatnot. That's all from Ben Franklin from his Poor Richard's Almanac. Also, it's Ben's Almanac because Richard from Poor Richard's is actually just the name of a English almanac writer that Ben Franklin knew, who also wrote an almanac where he referenced another almanac writer in like France. Basically, it was a whole chain of like almanac people trying to stay anonymous, and then their friends just using their names in just different countries to mess with them. So I'm in the same country as Ben Franklin, but he's long gone, so I don't think he'll mind too much. So anyway, that was a really historic part of his, so I really want to include it, and it'll also serve as a good point in the recurring script for character development, right? Like what makes any show interesting to watch is going to be the characters themselves. In this case, there's 2 of them. There's Mac, me, and there's Delta, the AI that we're going to build. the personification enough, right? And in order to keep it entertaining, I want at least once a week to have a good back and forth session. And this seems like a natural early place, just like at the start of a meeting where you start off lightly chatting with people and whatever. I want that to feel like this here, where the witticism's not too serious. It's just a conversation, but I'll still take up at least the 2 minute slot there. And then jumping to the end, there's the Mac review component. For me, this is pretty important. I don't know if you strictly need it for the show itself, but I'm not really making this to blow up or whatever. I'm doing it more as a hobby, like fun, but also as educational content to working with these things. So for me, it's like important to have a point in the show where you look back over the things the AI generated, whether it's photos or text itself, and be like, hold on, don't take this literally all the time. And here are some areas that you might want to look into in more depth. That's important to me personally. I definitely think it'll take 2 minutes. And I think a sign off as well would be a good touch, although that might be closer to just 1 minute. But it will be a slide in itself. Basically, if we have 2 to 3 slides and 4 to 5 minutes of consistently produced content week to week, that means we really only have at most 5 slides to work with for the topic of the day, whatever is getting presented on. Now, that's like just enough to handle your various archetypes for presentation. I think like anything less than 4, like 3 slides, it's like week to week. I just don't think that can support presentation format. I think 4 to 5 can just barely do it. It's just enough for a story. What I mean by that is there's generally 2 archetypes. There's I call it the tree and the snake method. Basically, for the tree, you outline a list of options here, 1, 2, 3, whatever, and then you take time to go over each option and then do a recommendation or conclusion. So that's exactly 5. So that works. And the other is the snake method. This is usually for uh, exploratory analytical work where you have a problem statement, what you looked into, the outcomes of that, and then what you'd recommend. So that's 4. So I think between those 2 things, if we consistently stick to those good, strong archetypes and just keep them really simple, we can have little mini stories, mini analyses each week. I mean, it's AI generated, so we don't have to go into like charts and whatever here, but I think that's approximately a sufficient level to make this work. The reason this was important for me on building is when I was making the actual like Python pipeline to call the master file we're using and then generate the layouts and then call the placeholders to actually insert the information. I was designing the creation of that very much towards longer form things and was over engineering the component where I was like, oh, you have to choose like each slide type and then justify and do all that stuff. I realized that while that's a cool feature and would be really useful if you were doing this consistently for super long form things, for our shorter structure, a more formulaic approach is just, I think it'd be way easier to implement. So it was a good learning experience. I also just have a bunch of formatting like things for decks. I can show you side by sides and when I'm looking at in a future video. I don't think it's important now, but mostly just color spacing, font sizes, like things along that nature. I don't love the look of this in reality right now. I like the structure of what I have, but I definitely want to do a pass on this deck and make sure that the templates are just much closer to what I'm used to seeing and a little bit cleaner from my own point of view. It'll make me happier if nothing else. Anyway, that's basically all for this week. For next week, I want to try to have the verbal component, the generated voice component, and have some samples for you guys to select between. And you can see and we can go over just the cool things that's happening in some of these like mediums you don't think about, like just how good some of these voiceovers are. So it'll be interesting to see, and that'll be next week. And I will figure out how to hook that up to OBS or post production because that will be a new experience for me as well. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your week and an early start to your holidays. See you guys next week. Bye.